Chapter 3 is called Ghost.
Did you see that? Wally crouched on the balcony. At first, it seemed as though the two older girls were dragging a sack of garbage. He said that it was the girl's youngest sister. Dead! Obviously dead! Wally looked wordlessly at Jake, his mouth hanging open. They had only thrown a few dead fish and squirrels and possums. The new folks were throwing people. The boys couldn't hear across the river, of course, but they had studied the small girl lying there. She had not moved a finger, not a toe. The sisters were crying like crazy, and then burial at sea? They dumped her in the river? I don't believe it, said Jake. In the river, said Josh. They sat with their eyes glued to the spot in the water where the body had disappeared. She sank way down and did not come up again, and the two sisters were walking slowly back up the hill, holding toward the house, arms around each other with their heads down. They must have weighted her down with stones. Wally's throat was so dry he could hardly get the words out. What do you suppose she died of? The water wasn't that polluted. We only took over one bag of dead stuff. Anyone with a grain of sense wouldn't drink that water or swim in a river with dead animals along the bank. But what if she didn't know, Wally wondered. What if she hadn't seen? What if she'd gone swimming one day farther down and the germs had been carried along in the current? Maybe one of those dead squirrels had a disease. Oh, man, Mom's going to have a fit. Well, we don't know that the dead fish and stuff killed her, so we aren't going to tell. Okay, you got it? Not a word to anybody. We can't even tell Mom the girl died, asked Peter. No, nothing. We'll wait to hear it from someone else. Wally glanced over at Josh. He had brought along his sketchbook because he liked to draw what houses and trees looked like from above. Josh drew things in his sketchbook. He didn't want any evidence of what they had seen from the roof. If the girl had died because of what the boys had tossed on the bank, then Wally himself was a murderer. He took a deep breath as he and his brothers climbed back inside. The boys were sitting around the kitchen table wondering who would find the body first when their mother came in. Good grief, is this how you're going to spend your last few days of vacation, just moping about? She laid her car keys on the counter and opened the refrigerator. She had just 30 minutes to eat lunch and get back to her job at the hardware store. We've been busy. We're just taking a break. Busy doing what? Just messing around. I would have thought you'd be across the river by now getting to know that new family. Fat chance. They're all girls. Really? Somehow I had the idea there were boys. So did we. How many girls? 2 now, Peter answered. I mean, 3. 3 girls. 3 girls, all right. I counted. Mother studied him curiously. Well, at least they have children. It could have been worse. It could have been a family without any kids at all. I'd go over and make friends with them if I were you. We will, when the Mississippi wears rubber pants and to keep its bottom dry. Josh laughed a little, and so did Mom, but Wally found it hard to smile at anything. After Mother went back to work, the boys walked down to the river and followed it as far as the bridge, but they couldn't see a trace of any body, not bobbing about the surface, not floating just beneath it. When Father came home from work, Wally and his brothers were waiting for him on the steps. Mr. Hatford was a mailman in Buckman, and the boys knew that if anybody died anywhere at all in town, their father was one of the first to know. Hi, Dad, said Josh. Mr. Hatford's shirt was damp, and he mopped his face with a small towel he carried over one shoulder. How you doing? He said. The boys got up. Anything exciting happened today? Jake inquired. I told Mrs. Blake I wouldn't deliver her mail unless she kept her dog in the house. I almost got my pants torn off by that beast of hers. Other than that, nope. Anybody die? Asked Peter. Wally reached over and pinched Peter's arm. Not that I know of. Why, did I miss something? I guess we're getting bored, Jake said. Nothing exciting ever happens around here. Well, you could always go check out that new family. Mr. Malloy is the new football coach at the college, I hear, and they've got 3 daughters about your ages. Did you meet them? Asked Josh. No, but I will before too long. You want me to say something for you? No, cried the 4 boys. Okay, then. We'll just let things develop and see what happens. What happens, Wally thought, is that someone's going to find a body and someone's going to ask questions and someone named Wally is going to jail. All because of 2 words, dead fish. He swallowed, but it didn't get rid of the rock in the pit of his stomach. On the last 2 days before school started, it seemed to Wally that he and his brothers were up on the widow's walk every waking moment, watching the new family through Mother's field glasses. He knew their name now, Malloy. Sometimes Mrs. Malloy came out to empty the trash. Sometimes Mr. Malloy drove off in the car. Once in a while, Jake or Josh would catch a glimpse of the two older sisters. Do you suppose she's not dead? Maybe they only thought she was dead, but the water revived her and she swam back to the bank. So why haven't we seen her around? Why do we see the older two sisters, but we never see her? Maybe she's sick. No, she's dead, all right, said Josh. He had drawn a picture of what the youngest Malloy girl would look like after being in the water. If the Bensons were still here, Wally thought, they would have helped look for her. They would have had some good ideas about where she could be. Well, he decided, he and Bill Benson would probably have figured out by now what made the rows of little holes in the trunk of the pear tree. They had even been going to camp out all night and take turns watching just to find out. Now they never would. Now there were girls to watch instead. Wally spent most of his time lying in the grass behind the house, staring up at the sky. Peter lay down beside him. Do you see that spider web, Wally? Do you suppose the spider spins the cross ones first or the down ones? Wally often wondered that himself. I think, he said, that the spider sort of goes across and down at the same time, just drifts down, hanging on a thread. And if the thread breaks, splat, said Peter. Usually there was at least some excitement connected with going back to school in the fall. This year, Mother had brought them all new t-shirts and jeans, and Wally and Peter had picked out new sneakers as well, but the boys hadn't put paper in their notebooks yet. The big question among the boys was what they would say to the girls when the two remaining Malloy sisters walked across the bridge. Mother didn't come home for lunch, so Jake made Franks and beans. Why don't we watch from an upstairs window tomorrow, and when we see them start across the bridge, we'll time it so we get out to the road when they do. I just want to hear what they have to say about their sister. What if they don't say anything? We don't even know their names. We can't just say, hey, so-and-so, how's what's her name? We could say, how's that sister we saw roll off in the bedsheet? Peter suggested. The following morning, Jake and Josh crouched at an upstairs window watching the bridge. Peter, with his new lunchbox, waited below. Wally, however, was still dressing. As he put on his new sneakers, he realized that the treads were so deep he could probably roll up a piece of paper and stick it in the groove. They're coming! Like a whirlwind, the boys rushed downstairs, Wally bringing up the rear. The two older Malloy sisters, wearing jeans and long shirts down to their knees, were walking arm in arm across the swinging bridge, leaning on each other. As they came closer, the Hatford brothers pretended to be looking down at the road. Ask, Jake whispered. You ask! You always try to make me do it. Wally, you do it. Why me? What am I supposed to say? The girls had reached the middle of the narrow bridge now, and still, walking side by side, held onto the cable handrails as the bridge bounced slightly beneath their weight. If one of us doesn't ask, Peter will. Have you buried anyone lately? I will not. Wally didn't know what he'd say, but he knew that someone had to say something. So he stepped out in front of his brothers and started toward the bridge. But suddenly, there was nothing at all to say, because as he stared, the two older girls stepped off the end of the bridge, and the third sister popped out from behind them. She came right down the path to the very spot where Wally was standing. She had either never been dead at all, or she was the first ghost in the history of Buckman. And here she was now, in front of his very eyes.